Ladies and gentlemen, Jane Fonda and Alan Alda.
Good evening, all 1 billion of you.
There's so many people around the world watching tonight that we're calling on the linguistic services of our co-host,
Frank Marshall.
The winner is
The winner is Geraldine Page in the Picture Box.
Kiss of the Spider Woman, an HD Films production, in association with Sugarloaf Island Alive. David Weissman written.
Hello everyone, I'm James Matteson, and the Oscar nominations are now upon us. Today I'm going to go through all 10 Best Picture nominations, which I've now seen, and I'm going to give my personal ranking of them. Now, before we get into things, I guess I should mention that if you didn't already know, the Oscars are kind of bullshit. It's been an open secret for a long time that many of the Academy members do not take the time to watch the majority of nominated films. And I don't think I even have to mention the amount of ridiculous and tone-deaf decisions made by said voting body over the years. Despite that though, maybe against my better judgment, I still do find award season though to generally be a lot of fun. I always do have a blast trying to predict the winners of each category every year. And at least for the last couple years, I feel like the Academy has done a really good job of nominating some smaller films, which obviously in turn gets more eyes on said smaller films, which is objectively just a good thing all around. So yeah, I guess my relationship with the Oscars overall is a little complex to say the least, but I'm still very excited to go through these Best Picture nominees here. While I prefer last year's lineup a little more overall, I think we have a really good crop of movies this year, with some very high highs and also some very low lows. So yeah, let's get into it. Now this one is definitely a bit of a weird one. Emilia Perez got the most nominations out of any movie this year, with 13 nominations overall, and despite that, I have not seen really a single positive thing about this movie anywhere else. I mean, it could potentially be the next Best Picture winner, and it has like a 2.2 on Letterboxd right now, which is wild because even like Green Book is highly rated on that app. But to discuss the actual movie, I just found it to be bizarre in the worst way possible. I definitely would say I respect the filmmakers for taking a big swing. I'm definitely someone who can look past the flaws of something if there is like genuine risks being taken there, but just nothing in this movie really connects whatsoever. It's trying to explore these real important issues like cartel violence in Mexico or the transgender experience, but it does so in a way that is just so cartoonish that it makes me wonder whether the filmmakers have ever interacted with human society before. On a technical level, the film really just falls flat too. The drab, washed out color grading, which seemingly is meant to kind of go for grittiness, just really makes no sense. The musical sequences in the film as well really just have zero energy to them. They actually reminded me a bit of the musical scenes in Joker Folie à Deux, which is another misguided musical from last year. Zoe Saldana, who is an immensely talented actress, is really trying her best, but it isn't enough to save the movie, unfortunately. Her character motivations never really make a lot of sense, and the writing of her character just feels thin overall too. I just found it to be really an intensely dull movie. I mean, I'm not necessarily even mad at it like I know some people are, but I just found that like nothing in the movie really works or connects like in any way. The script is shockingly half-baked and really just tries to tackle way too many things at one time. I mean, to me, the most charitable thing that you can really say about it is that the filmmakers tried to do something different and it just did not work at all in the slightest. But then you factor in the fact that it is up for like the most prestigious award in Hollywood, and it just totally boggles my mind. It's crazy. Now, this movie didn't really do a ton for me, but credit where credit's due, I think it does do a decent job of not falling into the traps that many movies like this often fall into. It does still feature some unfortunate and quite eye-rolling cliches, but it is definitely a cut above your typical Wikipedia entry Bohemian Rhapsody type music biopic. I just really found myself pretty uninvested in this one overall. I mean, I love Bob Dylan's music, and I think, like many, I am fascinated by him as kind of a cultural figure, but I really thought that James Mangold's journeyman style really hindered this movie. Bob Dylan is this, like, boundary-pushing experimental artist, so frankly, I just don't really care about a film about him that is presented in just such an ultra-traditional style. I should mention, though, that a more experimental Bob Dylan movie actually does exist. It's called I'm Not There and is directed by Todd Haynes, and it portrays 6 of Dylan's musical eras through 6 different actors. I actually have never seen that movie, but I definitely want to check it out now because it definitely sounds like much more of a movie that I'd be interested in. As far as other positives to mention though, I think Timothée Chalamet is really fantastic in this. I mean, if he wins Best Actor for this role, I really wouldn't be mad. He's been one of my favorite new actors for a long time. I mean, I think he's always just doing really interesting work with really interesting directors consistently. And he does do a good job here of capturing the inherent inscrutability of Bob Dylan while not necessarily like playing him as if he's like a blank slate either, which is challenging to pull off for sure. The musical sequences in the movie are also very well done. I definitely think it makes a huge difference when you actually have the actors singing on set rather than lip syncing. But yeah, this one really just had very little impact on me. I mean, it is better than it could have been overall, but it doesn't really do enough to justify its existence and make it a interesting endeavor overall. This is a bit of a strange one for me as well because I was like pretty locked in for like the first 80% of this movie. While I was watching it, I found it to be goofy for sure, but the narrative was engaging and it was also very well made as well. But then the film entered its final 20 minutes or so and really all the goodwill that it had previously built up for me just kind of disappeared. The ending of this movie just totally jumps the shark. While yes, like I said, the entire movie is very goofy and very heightened, the end of the movie just totally pushes it into straight up cartoon. And it really just underlines the shallow neoliberal politics of the entire film too. To go into that more, many have already pointed out that the movie is kind of this thinly veiled metaphor for the US political system, and the execution of that idea is really as eye-rolling as it sounds on paper. I just really have no patience left in me for this like very Hollywood type of earnest yet still deeply tone-deaf messaging in movies like this. The performances in this movie though are all very good. I mean, I feel like throughout the entire video I'm just gonna keep repeating that over and over again. I mean, this is a really great crop of movies acting-wise. Even the ones that I don't personally like all have great acting in them. Yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. I see why people are having fun with this one, but it's just not for me. So I'll just come out and say it. Despite this movie being one of the most beloved movies of last year and achieving word of mouth phenomenon status, this is absolutely the biggest disappointment of last year for me personally. I was really incredibly excited for this movie. I mean, it had been having great festival buzz for months when it came out, but I just walked out of it being so frustrated by it. And I mean, I love gross body horror movies, and I think that it is really cool that despite its weirdness, this movie has become this like huge mainstream hit. but I just found it to be so exhausting. Really, the big issue for me is that this movie has almost nothing interesting to say about Hollywood beauty standards, which I mean is fine. I don't need every movie I see to be this like fully formed, nuanced, thematic text. But for a movie that is 2.5 hours long, I just found it shocking that it has so little to actually say about the things that it claims to be satirizing. And before anyone says like, oh, the movie knows that it's blunt and stupid and vapid, yes, I do get that. Like, it definitely knows that it is very surface level. But if it's going to pull that trick, why does it have to be so punishingly long? If this movie was 90 minutes long with the exact same level of substance, then I would probably love it. But the fact that it just completely drags on for another hour, it just becomes so exhausting and so completely mind-numbing, and in just the worst way possible. In terms of some positives, the performances, again, are all great here. The visual style that the movie has is really compelling, and the creature/gore effects all look fantastic. But yeah, this thing just rings so hollow to me. Like, I went in expecting to love it, and I just did not at all. Now, to be honest, I really was not looking forward to this movie at all. I think the trailers in particular really did not do it any favors, but I did walk out of it being quite pleasantly surprised. It's definitely not like a triumph or anything, but I found this to be a solid movie with some pretty well done musical sequences, which really saves it. I really found the first 40 minutes or so of the movie especially to be very rough, but after that it does kind of settle in and just become like a good time at the movies. My biggest issue with it though would definitely just be the visual look of it. It just looks so washed out and the colors are so muted. I'm assuming to make the Land of Oz feel more quote-unquote real, but I mean, it's Oz. The whole thing is literally meant to be a dream. Like, why would you care about realism? The original Wizard of Oz is just easily one of the greatest films ever made, and also just one of the most beautiful. The colors of that movie are just so vibrant, and I really wish they had channeled more of that vibe instead of the aesthetic that they ended up going for here. But yeah, this movie is not exceptional or anything, but I had a good time with it overall, and good performances all around again. While this movie here didn't blow me away, I did find it to be a pretty rock-solid historical family drama with a phenomenal performance by Fernanda Torres at the center of it. Narratively, it does just really feel a little too traditional for my taste, and it does rely on some pretty tired tropes at times, but I was still really impressed by how reserved this movie allows itself to be. It's a film that uses visual storytelling to get characters' headspaces and emotions across, which obviously is much appreciated because that's, you know, how it should be. I can definitely imagine a worse, more Hollywoodized version of this movie that kind of operates at a much more melodramatic register but isn't nearly as effective, and this movie just never goes that route. The movie also just does a really good job of investing you in its characters. As I said before, the characterizations of some of the family members can feel a little tropey at times, but you still really feel invested in their lives by the end of the movie. Yeah, overall, I found this one to be a very well executed version of a type of movie that I usually don't find that compelling. So I'm definitely not as crazy about the new Dune movies as some people are. In terms of Villeneuve classic sci-fi adaptations, I'm personally just much more of a Blade Runner 2049 type of person. But these movies are pretty undeniable and are incredibly well-made sci-fi blockbusters, which we really don't get a ton of these days. I do for sure really like this movie though. I mean, I thought it was a definite step up from part one, and was really a treat to see on the big screen earlier last year. I think something about the Dune story just kind of inherently keeps me at arm's length, at least emotionally, but it does honestly make up for that with a bunch of goofy sci-fi world building, which is very much up my alley personally. If a movie is like not great but still features like goofy, weird sci-fi lore stuff, then I'll at least enjoy it. And the lore in these movies are very well done. Yeah, these movies are just definitely impressive feats of filmmaking, if nothing else. On a scale level, of course, but also just on an adaptation level too. If you know anything about Dune, then you know it had this like mythic, this is unadaptable reputation for so long. So for Denis to kind of come in and make something that is not only good, but also is digestible for like a mainstream general audience is really interesting and impressive to me. He really just achieves both of those things simultaneously and really just makes it look effortless. I was definitely incredibly excited for the Brutalist based off of the glowing festival reception that it had gotten, and yeah, this movie really did not disappoint me. It's been touted as another American epic akin to The Godfather or There Will Be Blood, and while I'm definitely not ready to put it up there with the greats necessarily, I found this to be a great movie overall, and one that definitely got better for me the more I kind of ruminated on it. It's for sure a dense movie, but I really respect that. It's touching on all these huge themes about the nature of art versus business, the inherent tragedy of the immigrant experience, and also the cycles of exploitation and oppression that capitalism brings about. And it really explores all these topics and more very well, I thought. It really never feels like it's bitten off more than it can chew necessarily. I was also incredibly impressed by the pace of this film. It clocks in at around 3.5 hours, which easily makes it one of the longest movies I've seen in a theater, but it really just flew by for me. I'm planning on seeing the movie again at some point, so maybe when I rewatch it, I'll feel the length a bit more, but it really did feel like it was like 2 hours or something to me. I think I was just so consistently compelled by it. I was also very struck by the ending of this movie too. Since this is a movie that operates at such a high level of scale, I think I was kind of expecting more of an explosive ending, but it really doesn't go that route. It goes for much more of a subdued and subtle closer, which I think initially kind of left me with kind of a that's it reaction. But the more I chewed on it, the more I just really appreciated the choice. There's also this short epilogue after the ending of the movie, which I found to be equally as thorny and thought-provoking. I've seen many people complain about the bluntness of this epilogue, and initially I think I kind of took it as a sincere ending as well. But the more I kind of thought about it, the more cynical and sarcastic it really felt to me. Like, it just feels like another example of a person in this man's life using his art to further their own sinister agenda. Anora is the new film by Sean Baker, who is a filmmaker that I've enjoyed for a while now, and I think this is the most acclaim that any of his movies have gotten so far. It's also the follow-up to 2021's Red Rocket, which is actually my personal favorite Sean Baker film, and is a film that really feels like it kind of went under the radar when it was released. And so I am really glad that this new movie by him kind of got the opposite reaction. I think the movie does do a very good job of examining and exploring its characters and themes, but above all else, I just found this to really be a fun experience of a movie. This movie also is a One Crazy Night in New York City movie, which I don't think I was initially aware of. So that was a nice surprise when I sat down to watch the movie. I just found this movie to be consistently so energetic and electric. There's this scene pretty early on in the movie set at this Russian mansion where these mob guys are trying to keep Anora tied up. That goes on for like a really long time. It feels like it goes on for like 20 minutes or something, but it's able to sustain this crazy energy throughout the entire scene. Mikey Matteson is really fantastic in this movie as well. I mean, I feel like everyone at this point has kind of discussed what a great star-making performance this is. She nails both the big comedic moments and the moments of smaller like introspection. I feel like it's just really satisfying overall when you see a talented actor doing really good work with small supporting roles, and then a director really gives them a chance to shine for the first time with a lead role. It feels like it doesn't happen to a lot of younger actors at this point, so I'm really glad that it happened in this case, and I hope she continues to have a really good and interesting career post this. So I have actually already discussed this movie in my favorites of 2024 video, so I'll try to keep this one brief, but I actually did have the chance to see this movie a second time since recording that video, and I really just love it even more now. There is really just so much visual storytelling injected into every frame of this film. Almost every single shot in this movie tells you a complete story about the characters and the world they inhabit. As I said before in my past video, the POV device in this film is just used perfectly to really immerse the audience into the characters' perspectives and their very subjective memories. I really feel like this is just one of the best examples of a film recently that really uses cinematic language to its fullest advantage. On rewatch, something that really stood out to me about this movie too is that at the beginning it really uses devices like montage to kind of ease the audience into the POV style. I really love how the first like 20 minutes of this movie just completely teaches you how to watch it and teaches you how to understand the cinematic language that the movie will be using throughout. The last 10 or so minutes of this movie are just absolutely unbelievable as well. It's just this incredible climax point filled with so many overwhelming emotions, and it's really just completely floored me and moved me very significantly both times that I have watched this movie. This is just kind of an astounding piece of art on so many levels. I wasn't necessarily sure if it really had the juice behind it to get into the Best Picture 10 this year, but I'm so glad it did, so more people have a reason to potentially check it out. It is easily the least watched of the 10 nominations, and in my opinion, it is so far ahead of all the other nominated movies on every level, it's really not even funny. Yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about the 10 Best Picture nominations this year. And if you want to check out other YouTube videos or short films by me, they're all on this channel, so yeah, go check those out, and bye.
Are decided by vote of the entire membership. Only members who attend special screenings may vote in the documentary, short films, and foreign language categories. Results of the secret voting are known only to the independent accounting firm of Price Waterhouse until the sealed envelopes are opened on air. This is Hank Sims speaking.